Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record this 2021 Time Magazine article titled How a White Supremacist Militia Uses Facebook to Radicalize and Train New Members about the Ukrainian neo-Nazi Azov Battalion.
Without objection to ordered.
Thank you. Time also put together a piece only 3 years ago, and it's quite an extensive video that gives full information about the Nazis in Ukraine and their recruitment efforts that go all around the world. It's amazing to me that just in a few years' time, it's now considered misinformation to talk about the Nazis in Ukraine. I'd like to quote the article. It says that Ali Sufan, a security consultant and former FBI agent who has studied Azov Nazis, estimates that more than 17,000 foreign fighters have come to Ukraine over the past 6 years from 50 countries. According to Christopher Wray, the FBI director, he said that Azov has been recruiting and radicalizing and training American citizens for years. He also finished saying in his testimony to the U.S. Senate that American white supremacists are actually traveling overseas to train. This is an extremely concerning situation. I don't think anyone in the United States government, Americans, do not support actual Nazis or white supremacists. I know I certainly do not. And I can't understand why in just a short amount of time, this information that our own American media frequently talked about is no longer talked about. I'd like to point out also, here's an NBC article stating that Ukraine's Nazi problem is real. Mr. Snyder, do you see this headline? This is NBC News. They say that Ukraine's Nazi problem is real, even if Putin's denazification claim is not. So even our own American media, unless you consider NBC or Time Magazine misinformation spreaders or disinformation media outlets, this is contrary to what you testified. And there's frequent pictures all over, anybody can find them, of Nazis. Here they are. This looks like something you'd see out of Hitler's Germany from Ukraine. And this is something that's extremely important to talk about. According to the Council of Europe, however, Ukraine is ranked well in the top half of countries in terms of how corrupt they are. In the last 5 years, Ukraine is ranked close to the countries like Gambia, Iran, Myanmar, and Sierra Leone in corruption. That's not very free and democratic company to keep. Ukraine has canceled their elections, arrested members of the press, not allowed different types of religion unless it goes along with the Ukrainian government. And right now, the biggest push in Washington, D.C. is to fund the Ukraine war with another $60 billion. And while we're talking about the CCP, I think it's extremely important to point out that our own wide open border is the most dangerous threat to our national security. According to CBP data, there have been 24,296 Chinese nationals enter the United States at the southern border just this year in 2024. I want you to know that's up 7,000% since Biden took office in 2021, when only 342 Chinese nationals crossed our border. When we're talking about national security and talking about threats through the United States, Congress needs to remember that our open border is the greatest threat to the American people who, by the way, Monday was tax day, April 15th, when struggling Americans pulled together to pay their taxes or filed for extensions or paid money that they just didn't have and desperately are hoping for a tax return. The United States federal government is doing everything they can here in Congress, persuading members of Congress with every lobbyist from foreign countries and groups, trying to tell us to send $100 billion overseas, and we're doing nothing for our border. So when you want to talk about misinformation, Mr. Snyder, you might actually look a little closer to American media if you don't like what they're saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, does he have the opportunity to respond to the gentlelady?
Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him a question,
No, her
Mr.
time's
Raskin.
expired.
You asked multiple questions.
I did not ask him a question.
You certainly did. You
Mr.
said, did you see
Raskin.
this?
Yo, it's really hilarious how much Marjorie Taylor Greene hates Jamie Raskin.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question?
No, I will not yield to one of your stupid questions that are always attacking me and attacking President Trump.
How about a mediocre
question? No, I don't want
question?
it. I do not want
An
your
excellent question?
No.
A smart question?
No, my time
An intelligent question?
You have no smart or intelligent questions.
One of the ways that we lose to authoritarian states is if they can get their claws into our leaders, either through money or compromise or psychological manipulation. I just want to show you what happens when our leaders cave in to China and to Russia. So here are some of the tweets that were sent out by the last president about President Xi in China. Smart, brilliant, everything perfect. We love each other. Friend of mine, a very, very good man. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. My feeling toward you is an incredibly warm one, a brilliant man. If you went all over Hollywood to look for somebody to play the role of President Xi, you couldn't find it. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. And here's the ex-president on Putin. His invasion of Ukraine is genius and pretty savvy. Putin was smart. The man has very strong control over a country, a tough cookie with great charm. So we need some democratic self-respect in order to combat the propaganda. And I am also happy that we saw today a few members actually demonstrate what propaganda running through American politicians looks like. Thank you for calling this very significant and important hearing, Mr. Chairman. I yield back to you.
See, the problem that we're having, and the reason that we're bringing up Russia as well, is because Russia is a threat as well as China. So we are not going to sit here and pretend as if it's only one or the other. But the biggest problem that we have is we have people that sit in this chamber and they spread the misinformation. If it was left in Russia or China, whatever. But the problem is that you have people that sit in positions of power and they have a $2 million budget. You think that they would call on some staff to find out if they were telling the truth about the things that they're putting on social media, but instead it works for their rhetoric.
You know, for Republicans to pretend like they're concerned about misinformation peddling is absolutely hilarious, because you have to get out a magnifying glass and try really hard to look for when they tell the truth.
But yet on March 25th, I didn't ask you a question, I'm talking to you. On March 25th, you signed a directive to put COVID-19 patients into nursing homes. On March 30th, President Trump sent the comfort ship, and you did not put COVID patients in the comfort ship. You didn't send them to the Javis Medical Center that President Trump had built, which was a field hospital. You didn't send them there. You put them in nursing homes, which is murder.
That's not.
No, that's murdering people. I'm saying that right now, and I'm also saying what a lot of people believe what your actions did.
The Republicans are doing everything in their power to flip the script on the Democrats regarding the response to the onset of the COVID pandemic by attacking the lowest hanging fruit imaginable, ousted New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
You've said a lot today. In your opening statement, you attacked President Trump and his response. I'd also like to remind you of statements that you've said. On April 13th of 2020 on the Howard Stern Show, you said, and I quote, "Trump has delivered for New York." He has. And then you talked about Trump sending the ship, the comfort ship. Mind you that the comfort ship was sent to New York on March 30th of 2020. That was just a few days after you signed the directive to put COVID-19 patients into nursing homes on March 25th, which led to murdering people's parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Yes, murdering them.
Aside from MTG playing way too loose with the term murder, referring to the disastrous policy that allowed for positive patients in recovery to be admitted into nursing homes while hospitals were overwhelmed. Remember, Cuomo wasn't alone, as other states followed the same or similar policies. And while there's no defense for Cuomo and his administration fudging data about nursing home deaths and transfer rates, you're sadly mistaken if you think MTG and the Republicans are putting on this hearing because they actually care about the deaths of these people. They're only doing this because Cuomo's the easiest target out there, and they need to distract from Donald Trump and his administration's response to the start of the pandemic.
Today you said, and I'll quote you, You said that high deaths in nursing homes is a conspiracy theory. Would you like to turn to the people here in this room today whose mothers died and their fathers died in these nursing homes and call them conspiracy theorists? Do you have the audacity to do that, Mr. Cuomo?
I never said that, Congresswoman.
You said that today. You're under oath.
I never
There
said
is
high deaths
There's
are
video of
conspiracy
all of your words today.
I never
You
said
can be
that.
fact checked. We'll do that when this is over.
Yeah.
You also blamed staff for spreading COVID in nursing homes, not COVID patients. You blamed the staff.
You know, regardless of any valid criticisms MTG is levying here, it all falls flat because this is nothing more than performative outrage and crocodile tears being weaponized to paint the Republicans as the heroes of the pandemic. In reality, they were responsible for pushing the misinformation and disinformation that fueled the pandemic's spread.
I've read a lot about you, including the fact that 13 women that work for you accused you of sexually inappropriate behavior, which, thanks to the Democrat DOJ, helped you out of that. But I'd like to say this, and I'll ask you, are you either the dumbest tool of the Chinese government, or did you know for a fact that you were being used by the Chinese spy that was working for you?
I've read a lot about you too, Congresswoman. I think this is a very serious matter.
It is serious, that's right.
She was a junior member in my team. I wouldn't recognize her if she was in this room today. But I think it is a serious matter. I don't think this was just in New York. I think there is an infiltration of Chinese, maybe Russian operatives.
The Democrat Party's definitely had a problem with Chinese spies. Yes, you're right. And I want to remind you, you're under oath.
Yeah. And I think it's a serious issue, and I think the federal government and the state government should work together on it. The state government doesn't really have the ability to do the international reconnaissance, but the federal government does, and I think they should work together to make sure they're doing the best they can to do the vetting.
Hey, listen, Andrew Cuomo should be criticized. He's had more than his fair share of scandals, but that does not give permission for MTG and the Republicans to cynically use the deaths of millions of people worldwide just to run cover for their dear leader. Thankfully, though, Jamie Raskin also took part in this hearing and put things into perspective.
But I confess, Mr. Chairman, that I'm appalled by the majority's decision to evade and bypass the central events of the epidemic for totally political reasons. The broader and authentic context for this hearing is, of course, the spectacular failure of Donald Trump's reckless and incompetent pandemic response, a failure which led to the unnecessary deaths of tens or hundreds of thousands of American citizens, according to Trump's own officials. In fact, Donald Trump's knowing and willful lies cost America at least tens of thousands of deaths, according to his own White House coronavirus response coordinator, Dr. Deborah Birx, who the chairman just cited as a decisive professional and medical authority. And she told the select subcommittee that more than 130,000 lives would have been saved during the Trump administration if basic and proven public health measures had been implemented instead of disregarded. On January 22nd, 2020, when America identified its first case of COVID-19, Trump stated, quote, "We have it totally under control." He goes on to say, "One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. It is going away." He then proceeded to abdicate any responsibility for our pandemic response and said, quote, "I don't take any responsibility at all." When he systematically failed to supply the states with critical medical equipment and PPE, he set off an interstate death match for medical supplies, telling governors simply to, quote, "Try getting it yourselves." Donald Trump said about the virus, "I always wanted to play it down." Despite privately acknowledging that COVID-19 was deadly stuff, he deceived America, assuring everyone the virus was, quote, "just a little like the regular flu." And he embraced the herd immunity theory that some of his advisors were promoting, which was again, a dangerous and destructive thing to do. After watching the bodies pile up outside hospitals and morgues, Trump then announced he had magical cures. He gave quack advice that hydroxychloroquine or disinfectant might be effective treatments for COVID, and he predicted the virus would, quote, like a miracle, disappear by Easter.